Hello, hello. Welcome to another week's episode of Free to Speak and Think on the FST podcast. Today, we will be pulling a video out of the vault. This will be the first discussion that we had with Grant Scott. The earlier discussion that I had posted was the second recording that I had with him. But I felt that this first discussion did not highlight him as a guest well enough. And he was gracious enough to be the first guest on the podcast. So this is actually the very first podcast I'd ever recorded. And so naturally with that, there will be a ton of mistakes and things that I had to learn, but mistakes I had to make to be able to learn and grow in those ways. And so I believe it's important to post not only for the value that it has in terms of the topics that we cover and what was said, but also for transparency reasons and encouragement for those of you who might be looking to make some changes in your life or start something new, that it's okay to make mistakes. The recurring theme on this podcast is that humanity is imperfection and it's okay to make mistakes. It's normal and natural to make mistakes, and it's necessary often to be able to learn from those mistakes and make those mistakes, learn from them, and grow. And so comparing this podcast to, or this discussion that I'm going to post today, to where the podcast is now, I think is super beneficial and healthy, and that there's a ton of value to be gained out of that. So for that reason, I'm going to be posting it unedited. And so anticipate a ton of mistakes, as I didn't give him enough opportunities to talk, or I'd kept cutting him off, which I shouldn't have. And I also tried to cram way too many topics into the same short discussion single episode, but there was a lot of anxiety and nerves and fear that I had going into it, that this helped address and calm. And I got some important feedback from him that I was able to implement moving forward. And so definitely also, you guys, if you have any feedback for me, you can go ahead and drop that down below. I may have already addressed it in future episodes or future discussions I had recorded, even some I had already posted. But I'd still love to read your comments, any feedback, any responses that you have to any of the topics. Because we covered so many topics, we didn't have enough time to fully break down any or many of the topics. And so if you have something that you wanted to add to it or to reply or respond to, go ahead and drop that down in the comment section down below. Keep it civil, but we do want to encourage more open and honest discussions by this podcast as a whole. And so go ahead and drop a like if you like this video or you like the purpose of this podcast and these discussions. And go ahead and also you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, as it's free on YouTube, and we really appreciate the support, and it does help out the channel a ton. Also, if you go ahead and hit the notification bell, then you'll be notified of new videos. Typically, we post new videos as a premiere at 4 p.m. US Pacific time on Mondays. And so that may change over time, or it may not always be exactly the same. And so if things do change, I should post that on our Facebook page, as well as other updates. You can check that out at Free to Speak and Think, or the FST podcast. And also on our TikTok page, if you want to check that out, we have much shorter videos on there. They're highlights from the longer form discussions, but they're kept to about 15 to 45 seconds. And so if you enjoy the shorter type content, then you can go ahead and check that out over there. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this week's episode as our first discussion we'd ever recorded for the podcast with Grant Scott. And let's get right into it. Hello. Nice. How are you doing?
Doing good. Wow, it looks like you got a nice setup there, and you got some nice paintings in the background and everything.
Thank you. It's my first time, so trying to make it not set super high expectations, but still
awesome.
Not, come in saying I have no idea what I'm doing, even though I have no idea what I'm doing.
Hey, got to start somewhere.
For sure. How have you been? It's been what, 8 years now? 7 or 8 years?
7 to 8 years. Yeah. Man. Yeah. Doing good. Working, got a very solid job. I guess nice. You can call it a career, but yeah.
Guess you could call it a career. Define that. Do you not see it as a career for your life?
I mean, for some people, it's kind of a 9-to-5 thing, and that's part of a normal, I guess, person's life. But I think a career, in my sense, would be something that you love and enjoy going to work, and just like you snap up in the morning and stuff. So I don't know if that's a great definition for it, but that's kind of my, I guess, standard.
That makes sense. Makes sense. I like it. We will get further into that. But just so everyone knows, this is the Free to Think and Speak podcast. This is our first episode, and our guest here is Ray Scott. But is that how you'd like to be addressed or identified?
Yeah, Ray's good for me.
All right, Ray. Well, I know Ray from university. We both attended Western Oregon University, and we were both in the same mentorship program, which was a internship of sorts, a practicum, where we got to see real life experience in the field of psychology, where we were paired up with youth at the local middle school who were identified at risk by various standards, and we got to meet with them and spend time with them, help them with various goals and some social issues, family issues, whatever they had going on. And he's a great guy, and I'll let him tell you more about him.
Nice. So kind of how Peter and I kind of ended up even coming in contact with each other was my family and I, at the time I had 2 children, and I was living up in Portland with my wife. And I said, hey, I need to get a better job and make a better living for my life. And so I decided to go to, as Peter said, university down here at Western. It was a good school, small, mid-sized school, a really close, I guess, teacher to student contact. And they had a good housing program for families there that was such a great deal. We couldn't pass up. And living on campus and experiencing that college life, it was a great opportunity for me and my family. And took a bunch of psychology classes and kind of went from there. And yeah, that mentoring program was a lot of fun. I actually
Absolutely.
ended up running into he's actually now, I think 18 or no 19 now.
Nice.
The mentee. We call them mentees.
Mentees, yes. We have mentors and mentees, and they actually did a lot of interacting with each other, with other mentors and mentees, just to plan events and study groups, things like that, because these students were going to the same school, and so there was a lot of interaction between mentorships or those partnerships. So you said down here, so are you still in the area?
Oh yes, yeah. We're living down here in the Dallas Monmouth Independence area, so
Okay.
close to work, and out in the country. We prefer more of a country lifestyle, I guess. Let your
Yeah,
dogs
for
run
sure.
loose kind of thing. So yeah,
I grew up
small
small
town.
town. Yeah. I lived in a town of about 3,000 and moved to a town about 600. And now we're living in
Oh,
a town of about 3,000 again. So I'm not necessarily not a city boy.
yeah,
One way grids definitely scared me when I they
yeah,
intimidated me when I was first learning to drive. But okay,
for sure.
so you are living in the same area where you went to school. Are you still attending classes? Did you receive a degree?
Yeah, so I ended up with my bachelor's of science in psychology. Uh, Graduated at the top of my class. I'm always proud to say
Congratulations.
that when I had a family and a lot of things to do. But yeah, graduated summa cum laude. I don't really know what that means, but I know it's pretty high marks.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the highest, I believe.
yeah, and then
Or
actually, my brother and my cousin
yeah.
went with me there, and we all graduated at the same time in 2014. So
Nice.
that was a pretty cool experience for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so what are you doing for work that is in that area? Is it using your
So
degree?
yes, actually, surprisingly, I would say it's mostly what I was focusing on. Psychology is such a broad field, and
It
you can
is.
do all kinds of different jobs with psychology, and I mean apply it to anything pretty much. But I'm doing social work. I work for the state now, and
Okay.
previously, before that, I had worked for a place called Shangri-La, and they're a local nonprofit that worked with people with disabilities, developmental
Okay.
disabilities, intellectual disabilities. did housing for that. And then also they partnered with the state to help people get jobs as well. So people that
Okay.
are on government assistance, they would uh, are contracted by the state to help people figure out how to do job search and set up
Okay.
resumes and
Nice.
interviewing and all that stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got connected with the state,
Okay.
and it was pretty a pretty smooth transition from there. So
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it. I remember I had a stint working with the state when I was working with the self-sufficiency program uh under Oregon Health Authority, and it was specifically the Oregon Medicaid, which was the Oregon Health Plan. So I was determining eligibility for that one program. And right before I left, they were integrating more self-sufficiency programs into that same application or those same programs. I did not end up getting to learn or be trained on a lot of these other programs, but
mhm.
I have similar experience. It wasn't necessarily social work where I was in the field, but I was working in a call center where I got a lot of experience and knowledge with um, real people with real struggles, and myself found myself needing those services at times, as
Absolutely.
we all do, go through various struggles in life, have high points and low points, and I do believe that those services are beneficial to those who need them. Okay, so I do have a handful of questions here, and we can either go through them, or I do know that you have a topic that's very personal to you, that you would maybe be
Absolutely.
able to speak a little bit more, and add a little bit more value than maybe some other people, in the topic of housing. So how
Yes.
we'll start with when you came down to the university from Portland to
Hmm.
Monmouth area, small town, the college only has about 600 or 6,600 undergrad.
Yeah.
And you specifically said that you found some family housing on campus that worked out well for your family situation. Can you go into a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we moved down here, part of the deal was that we are going to get into some good housing to where we wouldn't have to worry about too much. And it turns out the family housing program on campus is, and you fall under kind of the same rules as living in a dorm, very much like that. But you've got your own unit with your family, and the deal was just incredible. It was like I think 750 a month, and they took it
Wow.
out of your tuition and it paid for everything: phone,
Okay.
internet, cable, everything,
Nice.
garbage, all that stuff. And they still have those units there. They actually were built back in I think 2010.
So fairly
Um,
recently, and yeah, right before you
yes,
guys moved down here, actually.
yeah.
Okay.
And to get into your place, you still had to use like a key fob. It was
Yeah.
so foreign to me. I had never seen that before.
Yeah, no, the,
So
the technology it's crazy how fast things are advancing. I remember I had some jobs where over the course of me working there, even if it wasn't a super long stint, they had upgraded to like fingerprint scanners and biometric scanners for even just clocking in and out. And
yes.
that was pretty common across the board. Everything from, accessing tills at registers. It was um, and even some like logging into computers, if it was like an office, then at the time used biometric scanners, and that was so foreign to me. You'd always seen it in the movies, but it was
Yeah,
like the future is here, and
yeah,
and getting here
absolutely.
faster than we think. So excuse me, that is okay. So expand from there. It
Mhm.
was included in the cost of school.
Yeah.
And was there any kind of like financial aid that was offered to you at the time?
Just the normal Pell Grants. I'd won a scholarship from the community college I went to, and
Okay.
so that covered part of the cost. But really, we didn't have a whole lot after that. After the loans and paying for housing, we didn't have a whole lot when
Yeah,
we were living in family housing. So
that
we
makes
didn't
sense.
do too much other than just take walks, ride bikes with the kids.
Okay.
Watch the softball games from the place we were staying. It was pretty
Yeah.
fun. But
So living off the bare minimum. So you have, but you still had housing. There are a lot of
yes,
people these days that
crucial.
are really struggling to find affordable housing, especially without roommates. It feels like you have to have a roommate or multiple incomes within the same household just to be able to afford any kind of housing these days, especially along the entire West Coast. But where we live here in the Valley in Oregon, in the northwest corner of Oregon, it feels like wages just aren't at where they need to be for
Uh-huh.
anyone to afford any kind of reasonable size housing, not even like luxurious housing, just housing that is, say, in a somewhat safe or low crime area of town that is adequate size for a family, more than
Yeah.
2 or 3 people. It just feels like it's too expensive. And there's so many people that, they're getting out of college and they're having to move back into their parents' house, or they're struggling, or
Uh,
even like young couples who are looking for like a house to purchase, and they can't afford it, or they have a bunch of student loan debts, they have high DTIs and debt to income ratios.
yeah.
They have they just aren't being approved for these mortgages that are enough to. I know my wife and I had applied for some mortgages, and
Mm-hmm.
even paying off debt, like we weren't offered enough income, or offered enough in a mortgage due to our income and our debt, that was able to pay for even some houses that, even if they had like were able to pass inspection, the cost, the barrier to entry, I guess is what I'm getting at. The barrier to entry
Yeah.
is so high for people these days. If you don't already own a home and you don't already have equity, then to
Yeah.
sell that and
Yeah.
then place that as a down payment, plus you have primary mortgage insurance and high interest rates. They're not super high right now, but just no one
Yeah.
really has
Yeah.
$35,000 to put down on a house, which is only 10% of, or less than the average home value here. So
Yeah.
what's your take on that?
So true. Well, that is absolutely true. I mean, you absolutely need two working incomes with very low debt to be able to purchase a house in this area, in this market.
Yeah.
Even just 2 years ago, I mean, houses were $100,000 less. They're building a lot of places over here in Dallas, and these homes are going for 350. I mean,
Yeah.
with a lot of people moving,
Lumber is
yet cost of
incredibly,
lumber.
yeah, it's inflated about 300 or 400% just in a very short
Yes,
period of time. I know that when I was
absolutely.
looking recently, within the last 6 months or year, I was looking at the average income per household. This is both, like, if there were multiple incomes, this is factored in. The average income
Mhm.
per household in Oregon specifically is just over $60,000 per year, annual income, gross income before taxes. But the national average is around 90,000. But you take that and you look at the states with the highest average home value, and Oregon is $393,000 for an average home value, which is the eighth highest out of the 50 US states. And Washington, D.C., I believe, is included in that as well. So out of
Uh,
51, Oregon is the top 8 for home value, yet we're only at about 66 to 70% of the national average income. So it just feels like everywhere on the West Coast, and the problem doesn't get better when you look at Washington and
mhm.
California right now. So I mean, is the answer move off the West Coast? A lot of people are feeling like that you have to move to the Midwest just to be able to afford a house that's not 2 bedroom and needs $80,000 put into it. And how do you even get approved for financing if it's not going to pass
Yeah,
inspection? You have to have cash, you have to go to an auction, and just your
yeah.
average college student or young couple, in their mid 20s or even
Mhm.
early 30s, just doesn't have that right now, on top of the
Yeah.
debt. Because most people, students, were convinced that college was just the next step. It's what you did.
Yes. Yeah.
You had to go to college, you had to get a degree or a bachelor's degree just to even be looked at or
Yeah.
considered for positions. And I found that most employers, unless it's in very specific fields or STEM fields, don't care if you have a university degree. They want to
Yeah.
know if you have 2 to 3 years experience in a very like specific area related to what kind of work you're going to be doing. They'll train you for this specific job, but
Hmm.
because wages are so high, it feels like they have much higher expectations and wants from employees that are going to be much of a or much less of a risk to start to train and hire. And even just training employees and hiring them, there's a big risk there, as well as an associated cost. I remember when I was working as a manager at Wendy's, I was told that
Hmm.
a new employee cost a business an average of $30,000 to $35,000 to train, and a new manager bumps it up and at least doubles it, if not triples it. Like, just
Wow.
because, in loss
Yeah.
of product, or loss of
Yeah.
sales, or just training
The
time
time.
and
Hmm.
liability. I mean, there's so many things that factor into it. And then you have wages
Yeah.
and you have benefit packages and all the new laws about, if you have at least 50 employees, you have to provide insurance to all your full-time employees. And that actually made things worse, because then they just had no full-time employees. They just,
Yeah.
made sure that everyone was only being scheduled 26 to 30 hours a week. There's so many things there. But to
Yes.
unpack that, what has been your experience with the housing market? Is there anything that you have been able to find that's not an apartment or that's
Oh
not
man,
rent?
I gotta tell you, and this is, this is personal, but it's also good for people to hear.
I'm sure you're not
After I
alone.
got after I got out of college, and I had my two kids, and my wife was pregnant with our third. Uh, Actually, no, we'd had our third before I graduated. So,
Okay.
um, contraceptives don't work. But
Not 100% of the
anyways,
time,
no,
absolutely.
not 100%.
Only
Um,
abstinence works 100% of the time.
anyways, yeah, I said that in front of 300 people for work, and people were just busting out laughing. But anyways, so I mean, a married man, very fertile wife, you know.
That's a
Um,
blessing in
any,
disguise.
yes, absolutely. But you know what? We didn't have the funds for that. It
Yeah.
was.
You
I mean,
make
if I
you
could,
make it work, but yeah.
yeah, you make it
Yeah.
work. I mean, there's never a good time to say, I'm gonna just have a baby, and some people drop $15,000 just on the doctor's bills just for
Yeah,
that.
it's so
So,
true.
and people try to avoid that too. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that have home births, and those work out and stuff, but there's just a whole lot of cost to having kids
absolutely.
in the beginning. And I work with a lot of those people. So,
Okay.
um, I forgot where we were going from there.
What has been your experience with finding? Have you looked for housing? Have you
Oh
looked for
yeah, okay.
anything
Oh
that's like available to
yes.
purchase,
Okay,
or
okay.
are you just renting right now?
Yes. Okay, I gotta tell you, and this is something that's probably hopefully will benefit you, and
Okay.
benefit a lot of other people that hear this. I got connected with the West Valley Housing Authority over here, and they've got a couple programs. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they've got this one that's called Family Self-Sufficiency Program. And so,
Okay.
if you are, and a lot of housing authorities have something similar, maybe not the same type of, I guess, benefits, but it's worth getting connecting with a housing authority in your area.
Okay.
Just Google search, housing authorities in the
Is that a
area.
state
You'll
program,
find them.
city, local, county? What kind
County,
of program?
most of the time it's county, but
Okay.
there's a lot of nonprofits that do help with those too. So
Okay.
I've got a lot going on. So
Okay.
when it comes to these programs, and I originally went out thinking, hey, I'm going to look for these resources for the families I'm working with, and I come to find out, I'm like, hey, I meet these. I
I'm one
meet
of those
these
families.
qualifications. Yeah, I meet these eligibility
Yeah.
standards. So
Yeah, for
I'm like,
sure.
I think I might just try this out, and then I can
Yeah.
share it. This could be my testimony for people. So,
Awesome.
housing is such an important thing for so many people. So,
Yeah.
anyways, we get into working with, or get a place with the housing authority, and they've got these kind of dingy little apartments that are 2 stories and only one bathroom, and it's on the second floor or whatever. I mean,
Okay.
this is how I lived anyway, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But um And so while in there for a year, I ended up, they ended up asking because we were good tenants, we paid our rent on time, helped out with the neighborhood kids kind of thing, helped keep the neighborhood clean. They said, "Hey, Ray, would you be interested in having a house that's available?" We try to have a progressive plan where people move up kind of in steps, and
Wow.
we think your family would be good. So they said they had a single house available with a big yard and its own garage too. So
Nice.
I'm in a house with a garage and a nice big backyard. But
Okay.
during that time, I'm in this family self-sufficiency program, and so
Mhm.
it's a 5-year program where a portion of your rent goes into an escrow account to save towards your self-sufficiency.
Oh, that's
Um,
so nice.
yeah, and you can take that money and apply it to anything that's going to help you with your self-sufficiency. So
Okay.
if there's a car that breaks down or a something bad that happens to you, you can use the money from that account. And of course, you have to sign off on a bunch of documents
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But they cut you a check and you use it for that thing. So
That's
this last
awesome.
yeah, and I gotta tell you. So the rent for this place has been between 900 and $1,000 for a three
Okay.
bedroom, two bath place. So great deal.
That's very good right now, especially for this
Uh-huh.
area. I know we're paying almost that for a two-bedroom apartment, and we're 10 miles out of town, and this place is even $200 or $300 a month under market value right now. And the new owners
Wow.
know that, and every year they're raising it by as much as they're legally allowed to.
50 or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I think now it's 10%. It was 6% when it first started, but then it was guaranteed 6% every time as the investors saw their potential returns going down. So now
Oh,
they're actually it's increasing the rate at which it goes up overall,
uh-huh.
because they're always guaranteed raising it by that amount, or many are, not all.
Yeah.
But I mean, we kind of had the same the same experience and the same feeling in that rent is our biggest outgoing expense. And right now it's an expense. It can't
Absolutely.
be an investment. There's nothing that we can put aside out of that
Yeah.
$900. Ours is just under 900 right now.
Uh-huh.
And it's an expense that we're trying to put money away towards something that we can purchase, something that we can own. A mortgage is always going to be the same price, and you're not going to be subject to landlords raising the rent while their mortgage stays the same. So if we end up purchasing a house, getting approved for a loan, there's still interest there, but we're building equity in something. So like you said, an escrow account
Yeah.
is some of the money that you're putting away, you can tap into later
Yes.
for a big purchase or an important purchase that helps with your self-sufficiency. And that's what
Uh-huh.
we've found is the biggest barrier to entry is that when we're putting nearly $1,000 away of our income, which is half of my wife's after-tax income every single month, and she's working full-time in a supervisor position at a grocery store, a local one,
Uh-huh.
then I mean, that's half of our disposable income. And now everything else has to go to insurance. And, we have our child as well, and
Yeah.
he's not super cheap, and we have to make sure the house is safe for him, make sure that our medical needs are being met. Car
Absolutely.
insurance, we have travel expenses, because we do live outside the city. There isn't a lot of public transportation that goes 10 miles out of the city, that is considered a more like safe option, things like that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of expenses associated with that make it hard to just build up. Yeah, and then debt. And so debt
Yeah.
is a big one because sometimes expenses come up and okay, now I need new transmission in my car. My car costs say
Yeah.
$12,000. Even if it were like a small sedan, within the last 5 or 10 years, okay, $12,000, and now the transmission goes out. That's a $3,000 repair. Man, where do I come up with $3,000? But then even even the tuition expenses and room and board, if universities require you to live on campus, and then the food plans aren't always, super cheap either.
Oh,
So, and then there's
it's
incidental
ridiculous.
fees that end up
Mhm.
being, as much as insurance costs at the end of the year. I mean, you're just nickel and dimed out of everything that you have, but it's okay because it's guaranteed paid by money that the government supplies you through FAFSA. I remember that I actually ended up having to leave university. I wasn't
Uh-huh.
able to graduate at the time because they offered like half of my loan package, or my financial aid package, as a loan to my parents, and my parents said, we're not taking out a loan for your schooling. And the government saw their income, which was their retirement savings, because they were self-employed. And
Yeah.
so, but it was a vending machine business. They only made a quarter markup on each product that they sold: a candy bar, a can of pop, or bag of chips, for 35 years. And they only had 6 vending machines. So all money they had saved up. They didn't have a pension. They didn't have any kind of other income, unless like they did things on the side. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad did have work.
Oh, okay.
So fortunately, they did have some other income, but that's their retirement money, which is only for 2 people, in their late 60s, is only enough for about 2 years in retirement. But government saw that money that they had in savings and said, you can pay this toward your son's university
Hmm.
costs. So half of it was given to me in loans. A very small portion of it, they said, was personal or student contribution. I qualified for a $2,000 grant the first year, but then no grant the next 2 years. And they didn't see my 3.72 or GPA from high school as a GPA worthy of scholarships. And I wasn't considered diverse student for
Yeah.
whatever, however they define that. So it was really
Mhm.
hard to qualify for different scholarships. And I couldn't financially do it. I was undertaking 17 to 21 credits every single term, which was why tuition costs were
Wow.
high. But I can't take on a full-time job at the same time as working double full-time in school. It's essentially
Yeah.
3 full-time jobs. And then when do you sleep? How are you expected to succeed and get any kind of good grades? And I was also involved in extracurricular things. I was taking, I was involved in some community things like that mentoring program, which fortunately
Uh-huh.
we got school credit for, but you still had to pay
Yep.
$270 a credit for 4 credits for 2 terms. That was 8, so
Yeah.
nothing is free anymore. It's someone footing the bill somehow, some way. Even those government programs, it's still taxpayers who, even if it
Yeah.
goes to someone who it would benefit, it's still someone footing the bill. And I've tried to be as responsible as I can with, even just during this time, I ended up actually getting injured at work, but or I believe it was at work, but there was no proof at the
Yeah.
time, and it was incorrectly diagnosed for the first 11 months. So the
Uh-oh.
workman's comp claim was denied, appealed, and then settled, but it was very little that I actually got from the
Yeah.
settlement in relation to how much the expenses total were, and they're still ongoing. So I ended up just having a surgery about a month and a half ago, almost exactly a month and a half ago, and it ended up um, it, I've been out of work, and
Yeah.
I only got so much from short-term disability from the insurance that I had. And if it weren't for the insurance basically saying, as long as you're on work restrictions, active work restrictions, then we'll
Hmm.
keep you um, insured, even if you're not meeting minimum hour requirements. So that was the biggest answer to prayer and blessing, is because while I'm racking
Yeah.
up tens of thousands of dollars of medical bills, a lot of that is being paid by that insurance. And so everyone needs help in some way or another. But at that
Hmm.
same time, to cover costs, because now we don't have an income, I had applied for unemployment because I'm still able to do some things. I do have work restrictions,
Yeah.
but they basically said, we don't have anything that meets your work restrictions at this time. So I was looking for some other sit down jobs, some other call center jobs, or anything that I could do while in recovery or treatment,
Yes.
and just seeking that medical treatment. And I feel that a lot of people see that as a handout. And then what do they do with it? I like to think that people make good choices, or at least some of the best choices available to them at the time based on their priorities and goals and all the information that they have. But I know there are some people out there that would just take it and say, well, it's free. And so I have a lot of hesitation when it comes to taxpayer dollars paying for programs that aren't bringing benefit to the people that need it the most. And a lot, I mean, I also remember you were talking about the cost of having a child and how medical bills, even just for a few days in the hospital, can be upwards of 10, 15,000, 20,000 or more. And that's if the baby doesn't have any doesn't need any kind of surgery or intensive care or prenatal. And I remember that because I was working for the state at the time, determining eligibility for Oregon Health Plan. Like you said, I realized that, wow, our family is within these requirement zones. We were making it work without it, barely, but we had applied and I wasn't covered because we made over that for me, but my wife was under the income level for pregnant mothers. So she was able to qualify for insurance at the time. And then she was guaranteed coverage through the pregnancy, through two months postpartum. And then our son was guaranteed coverage for an entire year because he was born to a mother who had active benefits. So it's small things like that make a huge impact on the lives of people. Not to say that, okay, now that's $15,000 or $20,000 of taxpayer dollars spent spent on us. Well, why am I worthy of this or anything else? It's how would we have done it if someone didn't help? And that's, I really like your suggestion of, there are many people willing to help, whether it be nonprofits, charities, government. I mean, I think that people deep down, they want to help. They don't know how. They don't know where to get help. They don't want to feel like a burden to someone. And everyone goes through a phase, in my opinion, everyone goes through a phase where they need something. Either they need education, they need mentorship, they need in common in the church, like discipleship. They need to get from here to here, and they don't know all the steps or what other people have done to get out of the situation that they are in now, if they're really needing help. And that's just my experience. And I'm seeing now as trying to utilize what I am being graciously given. It's not something that I earned necessarily. It's something that is a gift that I'm trying to use to the most benefit that I can, so that I can get to a better place, so that hopefully I won't need that and I can contribute to someone else who can then benefit as well. So it's kind of like, it does trickle down in that it helps me for a period of time. And then I'm blessed enough to be able to get to a point in my life where I can bless others as well. But it's hard to give what you don't have. I always kind of use an analogy. I mean, it works with love, it works with patience, it works with, attitude and things like that, knowledge and money. But if you have $10 and someone else, or you can't give someone $100 necessarily. If you have $1,000, you can give them $1,000, but then you're left with nothing. And so, I mean, we have to think outside the box in ways of adding value to other people. It's not always in a monetary thing. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's an attitude. Sometimes it's a willingness to be there to provide a safe, like a peace of mind almost. I remember there were some roommates that I had in school that really helped push me out of a zone I was in, or an attitude that I had, or some choices that I was making, that they but I didn't know how much of an impact, negative or positive, how much of a negative impact they would end up having on my life. But they did, because they had experienced some of the similar things or had some other friends that had helped them in the same way. So this is all getting down to, we all need help, but everyone has something to offer someone else.
Yes.
But it's better when we all work together to get there because if we're all on our own, then we're all not all on our own, and everyone knows what it feels like to be on their own in certain respects. And I think the biggest thing here, I mean, especially in relation to housing, to get back to that topic, we need to explore ways, maybe as a country, as a society, as a local, as a state or cities. I mean, we live in 2 different cities, but ways that we can help others get to a better place in, I mean, I would hope efficient ways. So like if I spend say 5 weeks, say 2 hours a day or whatever it may be, 2 hours a week, I want that time to be well spent and to not be wasted in a sense. And so I feel that everyone looks at government and and says, well, what is my money being used for? Is it going to benefit me this way? Is it going to bring benefit here? Like, why am I not seeing this benefit in my schools, or this bringing value to me through roads and things like that? And when in terms of public policy, it's very hard to get things passed because you can't make everyone happy. And
No,
so
you sure can't.
there may be some things that bring benefit to you, and there may be some things that don't. And then there may be some things that benefit you a ton, way more than the person living next door to you. So I don't think there's any one answer outside of each person taking responsibility to be efficient with anything that they're given graciously that they didn't necessarily earn. And when they recognize that they have anything or something to offer someone else, they take advantage of that opportunity to help others, to help get them to a better place, whatever that may look like. I remember that there was a term that I learned. So everyone knows about the golden rule, and the golden rule was don't treat others how you want to be treated. And I had heard another rule, which kind of at the time, it kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. And I said, well, there's a line to it. But they had said, well, there's also the platinum rule, in that like treat others how they want to be treated. I think sometimes people can be a little confused on what that means. And like, I mean, you look at 4-year-olds, how they want to be treated may not be the best
for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, with a grain of salt, but I think that everyone's different, but everyone needs help at various times in their life through various circumstances, or maybe they're going through, relationship issues, or like housing issues, or money issues. I mean, everyone goes through struggles in life. And I think that everyone has something of, whether it's prayer, whether it's, just checking in and asking questions. Hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Can I come over? Can I help? Like, can I watch your baby for an hour so you can really work on like self-help or like grow in your relationship? I know a ton of people have done that for me and my wife, in that, or my wife and I, no, me and my wife, that they've said, hey, we understand that you're going through a rough time. Can we, have you guys had a date recently? And we would say, well, no, we haven't had time here, excuse here, which are legitimate reasons why we haven't, but it wasn't able to be put as a priority because some other things were a higher priority. And they said, well, let us do this for you so that you can use that time to build your relationship, so that you can use that time to get some sleep. I know that infants are very notorious for keeping parents awake. And so there's been so many people that have really invested love and trust and value into our lives, and I can't see us being where we are now without that, without mentors, without someone who's been through what we have been through and says there is an upside to this. Like this is just for a short period of time. I know that one of the biggest
Yes,
things
it
that
is.
I've seen in the media recently is depression, anxiety, suicide rates are through the roof. There's a lot of social isolation. There's like not a lot of like getting outside, and vitamin D that can affect mood as well. There's a lot less social interaction. The social interaction that is happening, a lot of it, or the overwhelming majority of it, is online. And we
Yeah.
all know how online chat rooms can be with anonymous, or it's hard to see the other person
Or
as,
talking over
or understand
somebody.
their tone. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Or not seeing their point of view, or having the opportunity to
Yeah.
ask questions or interject, for clarification. So you assume they mean
Hmm.
one thing or the other, or it's just you start to devalue their humanity because you think or assume they fit into these certain groups when they may
Hmm.
not, but it's hard to know that. Um, I think that that the mental health is a huge aspect of society, and especially right now. Sorry to get
Hmm.
some water.
Yeah.
Because everyone's struggling in, either in their relationships, or looking for work, or in their finances, or they're
Hmm.
seeing what's going on across the world or in government, and they're either afraid, or they don't see a way out. They don't see how it gets better. And my argument would almost be that it gets better by each individual taking responsibility to bring value that they have to their community, to their school, to
Amen.
their friendships, to their community, to their church, to their government, in ways that bring value to other people. And that's
Hmm.
really what I'm trying to do here with this podcast, is saying that everyone has something of value to offer someone else, but a lot of people just don't feel like, how can I do that? Or, does my word or my opinion really matter? Or, am I going to be censored if I say this particular thing, even if I feel that it's healthy or going to be good or right for me to say it, or it would definitely bring benefit, but they might be offended by it, or something else. And that's really this whole platform is designed to bring value to others, because everyone has value to share, even if it's not
Hmm.
money, even if it's not an extra room to take in, someone who doesn't have a permanent home at the time. Like, everyone has something of value to bring to someone else. And if you don't, that's when we need to band together as a community, and we need to recognize those opportunities and see this person needs help temporarily so that they can get to at least this point of
I would
self-sufficiency. I
love
really
that.
like that term. And just so that they can take care of themselves in a very like rudimentary way. I always
Yeah.
try to make the distinction between selfishness and self-preservation. A lot of people don't even have, like, they're just so unable to focus on anything else or everyone else, because they're just struggling to survive and get by. And so when
Hmm.
everyone's feeling like their head is just barely floating above water, how are they going to how are they going to save someone else who's right next to them drowning in the water? Like, it's
Yeah.
and that's where someone who, is either on a boat, or someone who's learned to swim, or anyone else within that analogy, should take the personal responsibility and say, hey, there's
Yeah.
a way out. I've been where you are. It may, excuse me, it may not feel like it, but there really is something better waiting for you.
Yeah.
This is just temporary. This is a moment in time. This is something that everyone struggles with. You're not alone. And how can I help you? And then really being open to hearing their response, open to exploring and being creative with different ways that we can add value to other people. I know in an economic sense, there's always gaps in a market, and the
Hmm.
people who can really recognize those opportunities to bring something of value to a free market, where it's a voluntary exchange of goods and services, and where someone of value sees a value in a product or service, and they're willing to pay a certain price for that value of product, that product or service, and then the person offering that product or service then also benefits. So it's like a mutual exchange of value. And I believe that right now we're just in a time where there's not a lot of mutual exchange of values. Everyone's struggling to see any value that they have, or to really see, how can I add value to someone else when I'm living off 2 or 3 stimulus checks a year? It's like, how do you even get by? I can't even pay my own rent, without charging up a bunch of credit card debt. Like, how am I going to, bring value to some other people? So I don't know. I'd love to hear your opinion on that as well, because I feel that that's where everyone's at right now. Everyone's struggling with money. Everyone's struggling with relationships. Everyone's struggling with communication and online, and feeling isolated, or like they may be alone in experiencing all these things. But that's my experience, is that the more people I talk to, the more people I realize are in the same boat, and just struggling to find a way out, struggling to see what's next for them. So sorry, that was a lot of time, but
this is
your input
the
on
reason. It's the reason why you should have a podcast. You can talk and say your thing. I'm actually a good listener. I've got a wife that talks a lot, so not a problem at all.
Yeah, it's a blessing in disguise again. My wife doesn't talk very much, so I'm often the one dominating the conversation, and I feel like I feedback, like, let me know what's going on in your head right now. Like, did I frustrate you? Did I, offend you with something I said? And so I think that personality differences are healthy, because they allow all of us to have something to learn, and all of us to have opportunities to sacrifice, which is ultimately what love is. Love is a sacrifice. When other people see you sacrifice something you want, or is natural for you, or you desire, to provide something to someone else that will really show benefit to them. And I think that's love. That's love in a community sense. That's love in a friendship sense. That's love in a church sense. And in a relationship, you have something that you want, but you give it up, or you have time, or you have something that you want to buy, but instead you go out of your way, inconveniencing yourself, bringing value to someone else. And it's a pay it forward, ultimately, at the end of the day. One thing of me benefiting you is going to be another option of you benefiting someone else. Is going to, like, it I don't know the impact that I have if I pay for someone's meal behind me. They may pay for someone's meal behind them, and someone's meal behind them. Next thing you know, everyone's done that for 4,000 meals in a row. And everyone walks away from that experience, maybe not noticing a difference in their wallet or pocketbook, but feeling better as a community, feeling that they're appreciated, that they're loved, or feeling like, wow, how could someone, like, why would someone do that for me? And it only takes one domino, one person's action, to really influence an infinite number of people.
And just one action in a day. I mean, I went to Starbucks one time. Hardly ever drink any coffee shops or anything like that. I'm trying to take care of my family, but anyway, so I go to Starbucks one time, and I'm like, oh, I got $4.50 to buy a Frappuccino or whatever. And someone had bought like $500 worth of Frappuccinos. And I was just like, what? I was flabbergasted. But it's a great pay it forward thing. When you can help somebody out, or be a part of someone's life, and just spend a little time with them, share information with them, be an encouragement to them. I mean, that can change the whole I guess, way of thinking for some people.
Absolutely.
I know you see. Okay, so you probably don't even remember this. We had a conversation. We're in the mentoring program, and I was talking about being a pilot. And you told me about a piloting program, and I have that website in my phone. It's still in my phone, waiting for me to do that one day. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be a pilot one day. But anyways, so I mean, there's so many opportunities for us to do to serve others.
Yeah.
The programs that I'm going through, that's just the family self sufficiency program is just one out of several that I'm doing, and I'm taking advantage of those opportunities. And sure, certainly there are people out there like, hey, this is my taxpayers' bucks, money, and shouldn't it be going towards roads and stuff like that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, people want to see kind of what they're putting in out and applied to the real world and stuff,
Yeah.
and so they may not see that, but I got to tell you, this has changed my whole kind of outlook on life, and
Yeah.
I have a whole lot more hope. We're actually building a brand new home over in Salem
Nice.
through another program I'm doing
Okay.
uh, to kind of supplement that because it does
Yeah.
cost so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually involved in three different programs. So
Okay.
uh, all of them towards the same goal.
Okay.
But it's going to make it to where I can benefit others
Yeah.
in the end. And I feel like I'm at a point where I can just be like, hey, you need $100, I can give you $100, and I'm giving you $100.
Yeah.
I'm not loaning you any money because I don't care about loaning people money. I
Yeah.
care about, I'm going to give you this money. I don't have any expectation from that. Don't
Mm.
feel any certain way about that. Take the money and just be happy, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So
And the
this,
humility that
yeah,
comes over you when someone does that. I mean, like,
yeah,
I remember that my church had said, "Hey, we know you have a lot of medical bills. We know that, Peter's not able to work right now, and we know there's a lot of stress because, your wife's working full time and she comes home and now she has to take care of the baby. She's pick him up from the babysitter, and then she has to get dinner on the table, and then she has to clean up the house, and
yeah,
she's already been on her feet all day. Then she has to take care of Peter, and they said it's not much, but it's we know this will help. And I, like, my wife and I really struggled to accept that, because
accept it.
we're
Yep.
like and it wasn't a little bit to us. I mean, maybe it was a little bit
Yeah,
to them, but like, this is, like you said, this is life changing, this is perspective changing, like, and that people would be willing to do that. It doesn't matter if it's one or 100, that like they would take that level of value or hard work, that they earned that, and now the way that will bring value to them is spending it, investing in my life. And
yeah,
it's surreal, it's humbling, and it
yeah.
it it changes people's life. That, I mean, there's a lot of like YouTube channels that are of these
Geared towards that.
entrepreneurs that are spending this money, whether it be from ad revenue or merch sales or anything else, that, or even their own money, and they're going and and tipping
Buying.
someone
Yeah.
$10,000, and they're like,
Yes, I've seen
what?
those.
or they're going out and they're saying, hey, I'm just going out today, knocking on strangers' doors, and I'm paying their rent for them. Like, what? I mean, but the amount of like amazement, like, that's what everyone, I feel like that's what everyone wants to do. Like, we have a genuine desire to be generous and to give, and just a lot of people really struggle with opportunities, or way, like,
Yeah,
seeing how it's even possible for them to do that. But like you said, it comes full circle. You do that for someone else does that for someone else, and after a million times it comes back to you.
yeah,
And we've all been there, and we all need that. And even if it doesn't come back to you, you benefited infinitely more people than
yeah,
just you by doing that. So, and even if you didn't, you benefited one person. That, like,
yeah,
I see that's just as good. We're all human. I see value in all human life. It doesn't matter,
yeah,
how tall you are, short you are, what color skin you have. Like, I see people as people. And I mean, I remember it was phrased one time that every I was watching a TV show. I can't remember what TV show it was, but they said, but this is my child we're talking about. And then the counter to that was, every victim is someone's child. And it just blew my mind, because it's like, at the time, it's like, yeah, like everyone feels this or has this happen to them or someone else, but you would want that to happen to you just as much as someone else wants that to happen to them. So I don't think that any giving is wasted unless any individual takes personal, like, their personal liberty, maybe it's their right or anything else, but
Yeah.
to act in their own self-interest that doesn't bring any value to any other people. I mean, maybe you can do that, but I mean, is that is that the best way that you could be spending your time? And I'm trying to make sure that I have, resources, whether it be time, money, any, like, attitude, knowledge, anything else,
Hmm.
that I can invest in other people. Any successful business, you'll find, invests in their people, because of
Yeah.
a business isn't a business without people, and a business isn't a business without customers, which are people that need to see value in you
Hmm.
and what you can offer them. And so at the end of the day, people matter, and people see when you do things that are you going out of your way of benefiting yourself and bringing value to other people. And usually, if everyone's doing that, if everyone is doing their best to take care of everyone else, no one is left untaken care of if it's used in an efficient or responsible or anywhere way. So that's why I
Yeah.
advocate for personal responsibility, but a heart
Absolutely.
of humility and love, and you own it, but you got it from someone else. You own your time, you own your attitude, you own your,
Yes. Yep.
your choices. Like, it's important to take ownership of those things, but it's also important to take ownership of being involved in your community, being involved in your family, like just investing as much as you can, because we all only have 80 years, give or
So
take,
much
some
time.
some
Yep.
much less, some a little bit more.
Hmm.
But I mean, time is one resource that no one gets back. And
Yeah.
so many people get to the end of the time that they have left in their life and say, okay, now I have $600,000. What does that,
Hmm.
I can't buy more time with it.
Yeah.
And so why did I spend all the time in my life making money that now has no value to me because my
Yeah.
time has run out? Um, and so I would just like encourage everyone, use your time wisely, bring value to as
Yes.
many people as possible. Money doesn't matter, people matter. And I've thought
Yeah.
that my whole life. Like, maybe,
Yeah.
money is a resource that you can use to bring value to others, but it is not the only resource. And it's
Hmm.
something that you can generate with time.
Yeah.
And no one can just buy more time, and so it's only a one directional thing. Like, time
Yep.
gets you
Linear.
things, time gets you friends, time gets you money, time gets you, whatever it is. But once you convert that money, that time into money, your time is gone. And so, like, I it's just something that I feel passionate about. Like, I wouldn't want millions of dollars unless those millions of dollars were spent on directly bringing value to other people. And that's really where I stand on that. Like, I don't think that loving someone else or acting not in self-interest or giving to others, especially others in need, is wrong. I think that it can be abused, absolutely, by people with
Hmm.
intentions that aren't, aren't in the best place that they could be. But I think that it's money well spent, or it's time well spent, or it's effort and attitude well spent to invest your
Hmm.
time in others, whether it be kids, whether it be your family or your relationship. Everyone is looking for a purpose in life, and
Yeah.
I would argue that the purpose of why we're here is to bring as much value to other people as possible, because life as well, so time is something that you can't get more of, but everyone also only gets one life. Not only do you not get more time, you get more seconds, more minutes, more hours, more days, maybe, but you only get one life. And so I would argue that that life is even more valuable than any other resource. I mean, if you find a way to give me another life or some more time, I'll take it. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, that's actually interesting, because a lot of people would say that, I would give up my time, I would give up my life to allow my child, a better opportunity, or, I would take a bullet for this person because it means that this person gets to, live longer. And so ultimately, someone giving up their life, and time is a part of their life, an aspect of, like, a portion of their life, maybe a small fraction or a big fraction if you're, say, working for a company for 45 years. So like you said, a career. Well, I mean, do you want to give half of your life or more, or your entire life, to something that you don't love, something that you don't really get much benefit or value from, something that doesn't really show value back to you in the same way of you bringing them value? Like, someone willing to give up their life for others to have even an opportunity at life. Like, I know that there's, like, it's a big contentious issue about about, like, abortion. I hear a lot of the arguments come out of, well, this isn't the plan I had for my life, or I wouldn't be able to provide, a safe opportunity, or a safe housing or food or anything else. If I can't take care of myself, how can I take care of this? And my argument has been steadfast of, a life is infinitely more valuable than anything else. And even the opportunity at life, like we were talking about earlier, it's a temporary situation, maybe for the first 3 months, maybe for the first 3 years, they're really struggling, and people grow out of that. Like, I mean, there's, like you said, there's always resources, and there's always people willing and wanting to help. I couldn't imagine the emotions and the choices and the pressure that they feel. I know a lot of these cases are teenagers, and 13 to 15 years old. Oh man, I'll lose all my friends, and I may not even be able to go back to my parents' house, and I'm going to be, and that sucks. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from that. That sucks. I would still say that life, your life, the child's life, like, is worth fighting for, is worth sacrificing for, is worth giving up some level of convenience, or some level of, maybe you can't have the nicest car, maybe you can't have the nicest house, maybe you can't go out to eat, maybe it requires more work or more, sacrifice to then coupon and, go to stores. Maybe, even having that child will increase, the limit so that you can get on government programs. I mean, or even give you a tax credit. I mean, there are people who want to help. And even, like, and then there's the argument that's, well, I wouldn't be a good parent for them, so therefore they deserve to lose their chance or opportunity at life. And I would say, like, a lot of people have parents that aren't perfect. I would argue everyone. A lot of people, most parents don't go into parenting knowing exactly what to do as a parent in every single situation. And I've heard so many times, if you wait until you're financially ready to have a baby, you'll never have one, because your priorities change. When you realize, oh man, I'm pregnant. Okay, now I have to start, I have to start doing this. I have to start doing this. I have to get involved in these groups. I have to, I have to humble myself and ask for help. And I have to, like, sacrifice something that I want, which is maturity, which is responsibility, which is growth. I would argue that's a good thing for people becoming parents and realizing that life isn't all about them anymore. Maybe they, didn't think that before, but it completely shifts your perspective entirely. I do see that it is 3:30 here. Were you thinking that you wanted to keep going, or are you thinking that you also
I mean, this is fine. I mean,
okay,
if we end by 4, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So 4 o'clock.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
I really feel like I don't know how to say it, that like life can be taken away in a moment very easily, very, very, very easily, but life can't be given back. I know,
Yeah.
actually, kind of on a lighter note, I had, I had heard a bunch of, mothers saying, I brought you into this world, I can take you out. The thought
I've
of
heard that a few times.
it's
I've
a
heard
very
that.
good idea. Unfortunately, that's only a one directional thing. You can make life, but you can't give it back to someone who it's been taken from.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are, unfortunately, like, reality is there are humans who make the choice or have the attitude, or for whatever societal pressures or pressures, maybe internal pressures, they feel
Hmm.
that they need to, for whatever reason, or that they'll only be satisfied, or their goal is to end other lives. I mean, we just had a whole decade and a half of, these mass shootings popping up all over the country. I mean, I couldn't imagine what's going through someone's head at that time. And all human life lost is a tragedy. I'm just gonna say, like, because no, I don't want any life to be lost that is able to be prevented, like, or having the loss of life be prevented. But there's also the argument that if one person's life worth 10 or 15 or 20 or 200, or 2,000 people's lives, is it morally right to end the life of one person so that they don't end the life of, of 30,000 other people, or whatever it may be. I remember that there was a Flight 93, I believe it was, where some hijackers took over some planes on
Yeah.
September 11th, and
Hmm.
they were going straight for, I believe it was the Pentagon or White House, or
Yeah, the
something like that.
Pentagon. That was the
And
Pentagon one. Hmm.
um
Or no, that was the
no, it
White
was
House
it
one.
was the White House, yeah. And they
That was the
they
White House
ended
one.
up, the
Yeah.
passengers sacrificed their own life
Themselves. Hmm.
to stop mass destruction. Like, those people are heroes. Anyone
Yeah.
anyone who shuts down or stops an imminent threat to human life, especially at the expense of their own life,
It's
I regard as a hero.
absolutely hero.
But it's
Absolutely.
always a judgment call. No one has infinite knowledge. No one knows if they're actually going to do it, if they're not, like. And so I have to
Uh-huh.
take that with a grain of salt. Like, I wasn't in that situation. I don't know what I would have done in that situation. What's my training? Where's my headspace at? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And so I try to have benefit of the doubt, like innocent until proven guilty, for people who have to make those life decisions. I remember
Yes.
I worked in
Yeah.
security, and we did not have the duty to act, which was a blessing. But at the same time, if we saw a crime being committed and we did not feel comfortable or trained or experienced enough to approach that situation, especially as being an unarmed security officer,
Yeah.
private security officer, we had the option to back off, kind of watch what was going on, watch what direction they left going, what were they wearing, what
And
happened,
yeah, report.
document it,
Hmm.
and then report it to local law
Hmm.
enforcement agents, who would then take responsibility because they had duty to act. So these people, these officers, they don't know everything. They only know what they're told, but they know that there's a threat. They know that there's a threat to people's, like, property or people's lives, and
Hmm.
they rush into these situations,
Situations. Hmm.
often blind or mostly blind, to make sure that people, as little lives are lost as possible, or as little destruction to people's property as possible.
Yeah.
Like, in these instances, I think that there's some no-win situations. Sometimes there's going to
Absolutely.
be an
Yeah.
inevitable loss, and they go into these situations trying to minimize losses and eliminate imminent threats or
The threat.
active
Yeah.
threats.
Imminent threat. Hmm.
But I mean, I know that that's one of the biggest, struggles that a lot of people are having in this country right now, especially within the last year and a half. There have been a lot of shootings by officers, many of them fatal, and and everyone's quick to, well, not everyone, like many people are quick to make a judgment call one way or the other, either, oh, it was justified, oh, it wasn't justified, oh, that, you know, all
Yeah.
life lost is a tragedy. Sometimes loss is inevitable. And, you know, is it, you know, if it's a criminal who is posing an active threat to human life, is their life being lost worth the saving of innocent lives? Can't always say innocent, but I mean like public
Yeah.
life, people who are not an imminent threat. Like it's something that's really like tearing for me, that like I want to
Yeah.
love everyone, and I want to bring people who, you know, may have that attitude or that desire that they want to bring harm to people, or, you know, if they want to hurt people. I want to, if possible, talk them down, talk them
Hmm.
out of it, de-escalate the situation, and give an opportunity to really bring value to them and say, hey, there's a better way. You don't have to do this. Sometimes talking isn't what
An
gets
option,
through to
you know?
them, and that active or imminent threat is still there. So I at a time, you know, wanted to, you know, become a police officer so that I would be able to protect human life. And it seems like so many people are leaving that profession because even if they make a judgment call, which was the best judgment call that they could have made,
Yeah.
given the information, given, you know, their perspective at the time, based on their education and training, and there's still public outrage, they still lose their marriage, they still get put, you know, for a whole life in jail, they still lose their job and all their credentials, and they're not seen as a hero for ending an imminent threat. Maybe it wasn't an imminent threat, but in the high pressure situation, they didn't know that at the time. Hindsight's 2020. i
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what these people are going through, both on the victim side and on the officer's side, of going to work every day, putting your life on the line, entering situations that you know for a fact have a high risk of being dangerous or fatal, and doing everything you can to have the perfect outcome. But we're human, and
Yeah.
and humans aren't perfect. And so, you know, I try to have benefit of the doubt as much as possible. And I do know that, I mean, I believe that evil exists in the world. There's some people that make choices that are inherently wrong, and how people might define that may change. But I believe that anyone who has a desire to act in evil ways is going to use any means necessary, whether it be
Hmm.
money, whether it be influence and manipulation and communication and words, or whether it be, you know, guns or anything else. Anyone with the intention of evil is going to use all resources available to them, or any resource available to them, to harm. And that is, I mean, that's, I hope, my hope for humanity is that those of us with good intentions win out over those with evil intentions. But unfortunately, life can be taken away in an instant. And so it's really easy to think that there's a lot more evil in the world.
Yeah.
Because, well, why did this have to happen? Why did this have to happen? Well, because some people made a choice, and because of that choice, loss occurred. I also kind of have a different perspective of it because I worked in insurance. And so insurance was like,
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't a zero sum game. It was like, well, they pay premiums, and if they're actively paying premiums, you pay out based on the loss. And sometimes there's no
Mm.
loss, and sometimes there's a lot of loss. So I mean, the law of large numbers is hopefully that, you know, if you insure enough people, that statistically this will happen at these statistical rates. But I mean, any loss is a loss, and loss is inevitable on a large scale. I struggle to see that there will be no loss in a country of nearly 340 million people growing every day. You know, I remember that I think in 2019 there were 28, you know, shoot
Oh,
people
deaths by
in
cop or
America
whatever.
who were shot, who were unarmed. I believe that 19
Hmm.
of them were were white, and 9 of them were black. So there are 28 people.
Yeah.
But I mean, psychology, you know, we have research background. Statistically significant 29 people may indicate that, you know, like, correlation does not equal causation. It may indicate
Yeah.
that there's something that can be done that's a problem, or, you know, maybe more police training, or, you know, something like this, more hand-to-hand combat instead of always resorting to lethal force, or whatever it may be. um but on a scale of 340 million people, that's
Yeah.
something to the effect of, I don't have the exact math, but it's 0.0000001%. And that's not
Wow.
statistically significant. I'm not saying that those lives are not
Oh yeah.
something of significance,
Yeah.
but you have to look at it on a mass scale and say, is this a systemic issue that's affecting 1.9 million, or however many, you know, people, like officers that exist? I can't, maybe it's 600,000, 300,000, something like that. And there's like 5 million instances, or 3 million like interactions with people,
Yeah.
like public and police. And so if you have 5 million interactions and double digit people who are ending up, you know, dead in these circumstances, maybe justified, maybe unjustified, you like, I mean, I can't see that as something that needs mass, you know, like mass attention, mass
Reform.
change, mass reform. I mean, maybe,
Hmm.
but I mean, I also try to look at things from a very realistic standpoint and say, well, okay, how many, like how much of a percentage of tax dollars, you know, should we spend or take away? Because, you know,
Yeah.
it's in economics, there's a basic principle of trade, I believe it's trade-offs. Like if you use your time to go to the grocery store, you can't use that time to stay home and go take a nap. Like it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
unless until they develop, you know, a way to grocery shop online from home while you're asleep, that'd be pretty impressive. um but I mean everything that is done means that that same thing, or those same resources that were used for that thing to be done, are not or cannot be used somewhere else in that same instance, maybe again in the future. But I feel that really it comes down to, all like political issues come down to priority and perspective. Well, like goals are, you know, tied in with
Yeah.
priority, but I mean, some people have different priorities, place different priorities on things, and some people maybe don't understand, you know, the magnitude of, um, you know, people making 30 to 60 to $90,000 paying 20 to 35% of their income over 300 and, you know, 40 million people with, you know, maybe 160 million households, or whatever it may be, 100 million households. Like that's a lot of money. And so they see these really big numbers. They see like, oh, $4 billion on this. Well, $4 billion is only 0.0001% of the budget. Oh, like
Yeah.
it's there's still big numbers, but I feel that like priority is the biggest thing that should be talked about between people. Like, should the priority
Hmm.
be, you know, spending resources where they need it, like, or on people who are in the most need? Or like, should resources be spent on roads? Should resources be spent on schools? Should resources, like, what is the priority? Is the priority life? Is the priority education? Is the priority like health, or health care? I would argue not health insurance. I would try to create a disincentive to inflate prices in the healthcare system. But
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that everyone values health, but it doesn't have to cost so much. And there are
Hmm.
several like that's a whole nother discussion. There are several reasons
Oh yeah.
why prices are high, but I don't think insurance is the answer. I think that reducing healthcare costs, making it more affordable for everyone, how are you going to do that? Quickly though, healthcare you can have like, it's just anything, but I mean, especially healthcare, you can have one of three, you have two of three things, but you can't have all three. You can
Okay.
have, or how I've heard it argued, and it makes total sense. You can have affordability, you can have universality, and you could have quality. So but you can only
Oh,
have two. You can have quality and affordability, but if it's quality and affordable, it's not universal. People, it's not available to everyone. Or you can
okay.
have affordability of like for everyone, but it's not quality. Or you can have affordability
Mm-hmm.
and quality, or you can have universality and
Yeah.
quality. It just costs too much. And so
Yeah.
like that, but that breaks down to priorities. Like, do we want quality health insurance? Do we want universal health insurance? Or do we want um or do we want affordable health insurance? We have to be able to afford it to provide it to the most amount of people, and we have to provide it to the most amount of people, but what are they getting for that cost? So like
Mm-hmm.
all of them are worth arguing from a certain perspective. But I feel that people, because everyone's priorities are different, any kind of public policy or public outrage or media
Yeah.
outrage is from a perspective of priority. Well, you don't see me as a priority. Maybe that's true. There are some people that like would go out and, you know, like if they had the choice between their, say, daughter and someone else's daughter, they would pick their daughter every time.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's
who
just
wouldn't?
well, and that's the thing is like it comes down to priorities, and especially when given the option, like that's humans. I would say, you know, maybe it's a flaw, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, who knows. But I think that everyone is struggling in one way or another. And if they're
Mhm.
not, they did at one point in time. And if they never did, I would argue that's a terrible thing, because the struggles help you recognize when there's something of value that you have, or when like if I never had a
Yeah.
bad relationship, I would never understand how good my
Yeah.
good relationship is. If I never had like my parents make a mistake, like I wouldn't understand how hard like how hard it is to be a parent and not make a mistake, or understand the value of like having good parents, not like necessarily like I think
Yeah.
it's I think that the adversity that we face in life really helps us value and treasure and not take for granted those things that we want, or that we may already have. But unfortunately, everyone is in their own has their own experiences. Everyone has their own priorities. Everyone has their own struggles. But I think it's just important to know that everyone matters. Everyone
Yeah.
is struggling, and everyone needs help. And everyone has something of
To give.
value to
Yep.
offer someone
Hmm.
else. Yeah. Um, and so I need to drink of water though. Yeah. Sorry, I talked a lot.
Wow. So, I mean, a lot of this has to do with paying it forward and being a part of other people's lives other than yourself. Giving back. I guess you know, being being a part of a relationship, and there's a couple of points I wanted to make. When it comes to life lost and things like that. When it comes to the abortion piece, you don't know what that baby's potential was. I mean,
Yeah.
that baby could have created the cure to cancer,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cure to all kinds. I mean, and there are people out there that
Unlimited
were,
potential. Yeah.
yeah, the unlimited potential. I mean, people are a commodity
Yeah.
in a sense. I hate saying it like that, but
They are.
every
I mean,
every life,
at the bottom of the day, I mean, like
yeah.
I feel that most people have
Hmm.
worked in a position where they're just a number. Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
remember when I worked for Kroger or Fred Meyer, I mean, like I had some people, that I worked with that kind of valued me as an individual, but I was just an employee ID. And if I left, then they were just going to hire another employee
Building.
ID.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, at the end of the day, some people in some businesses see people as a commodity, but people are also a limited, there's not
Yeah.
infinitely, an infinite amount of people that exist. But even if there were, I would still argue that every single life is intrinsically valuable, irreplaceable. And
Yes.
like you said, there's no way to know the potential that you had. I mean, like even me 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea where I would be now. And I may have thought like a lot of this wasn't even possible, or I may have thought the exact opposite. Like, oh, I should
Yeah.
have been here. I could have been here. Like I there's so many people I know that said, if you told me 15 years ago that I would end up here, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have, chalked it off as a joke, kind of said, okay, thanks, bye, and thought you were crazy. Because I mean, people are fluid commodities. I mean, like people have
Yeah.
the capacity to make choices. People have the capacity to learn. Like the best intelligence is not artificial intelligence, it is human intelligence. And people have the ability to reason and learn and discuss and grow and be efficient or not be efficient. They have the choice
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make choices. And so like they're a commodity that when trained right, whether from a very young age or raised to be something, of something. I mean, like when like it it's a very hit or miss thing. People like, I think one of the best arguments here is, or like analogies is dogs. I know that it was a very big thing to have, say, like pit bulls raised to be fight dogs. And
Mm.
if they're raised to be fight dogs, they don't know anything else except fighting. And I think a lot of people are raised that way. They're raised, to believe a certain thing or not believe a certain thing. They're raised to be judgmental or stereotypical. They're
Yeah.
raised to, but that's not who they are necessarily. That's what they've been taught. And
Yeah.
people can learn to unlearn. I guess if that makes
Yeah.
sense. People can grow. People are not tomorrow, like, or next week or next year. I will not guaranteeing I will not be the same person I am today. I may have, a lot of the same interests. I may have a lot of the same experiences and, and have the same friendships, but that doesn't mean that in a year I will be the same exact person that I am right now with the same exact
Mm-hmm.
resources, with the same exact knowledge. Like I believe that people are the best commodity, are the best resource that we can invest in and grow and train to be the best that they can be. Like I think that there's always more potential that can be unlocked, and we're finding that out more and more and more, like throughout history, that we used to think only this was possible, and then this happened, and then there's new
Mm-hmm.
world records here, and there's new world records here, and like we keep pushing the limits of what we think is possible, which ultimately at the end of the day, does that mean that everything's possible? Maybe not, but we're it's a very interesting, idea, in that, like, why place any kind of restrictions or limits or boundaries on us at all? Some of the most successful people
Yeah.
might argue, or their advice to you would be, don't limit yourself. Like, try new things, or talk to new people, or really explore what you have to offer, and the resources and the access. I don't know the word, but the opportunities out there, they are out there. You just have to find them. You have to explore them. You have to be creative. There's always a different way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be several ways that end up at the same result. But there's always a different way of thinking. There's always something you don't know. There's always a relationship that like that is at a level that you haven't gotten to yet, or could be at a level that you haven't gotten to yet. So it's unlimited potential if we make the choice to tap into that unlimited potential. But at
Yes.
the end of the day, it's a choice. And so that's why I really try to, encourage everyone to make the choice to be responsible, to take responsibility of their own life, to take responsibility of bringing value to other people in their community, and to benefit someone other than yourself, because you have no idea how much impact you can have. You, one person,
Yeah.
can have, you, each of the listeners too, like you, me, we have no idea the impact that we can have. And given time, everything can change in an instant, both for good or bad, or, and even bad things can be used in ways that create an infinite amount of good. like good comes out of bad. There are a lot of, people who, ended up passing away from a certain disease, or, got a lot of media attention that then got a lot of support, and people who were passionate about change, and one person's influence, a terrible thing maybe that happened to one person, brought so much good. And so I'm not saying I don't want bad things to happen, but I'm saying that look at bad things as an opportunity for good. Look at struggles in your life as a way to now maybe have more empathy with someone who's going through the same thing that you just got out of, or maybe that you're overcoming currently in your life. And so I wouldn't argue that a bad thing is always a bad thing. I would argue that every decision we make matters, and we always have the decision to do good or not, because we have the capability, we have the what's the word I was thinking of, we have the capacity to make choices. And I believe that it's important to encourage everyone at all times, to the best of their ability, make the best choice. Maybe not always the best choice, but ideally, when people talk about a utopia, my utopia is everyone bringing value and benefit to everyone else, so no one's left with no value or benefit, and at the same time everyone making the best choice that they know how, in an efficient way, like a responsible way or a mature way. I mean, I would say that not being mature is sometimes more fun. I'm still a child at heart, and I love to play and have fun. And but I had it's a whole nother perspective. I had a student teacher. His name was Mr. Wagner. And he actually, so he was student taught my sophomore year at high school, and he came back after my freshman or sophomore year, and he came back to end up working at that same school, and I had him for another class my senior year as well, after his student teaching was over. But he put the idea in my mind, the thought, the premise of, there's a time and a place, and now is now the time or the place. And it should be both whenever you're, considering doing something. Maybe there's a time to go 80 miles an hour on a road. Maybe there's a time to jump out of an airplane. Is that time now? And so, I mean, it's kind of like a lighthearted thought, but it applies to so much in our lives, with respect to maturity, especially, in that there may be a joke that's really funny to you and to some other people, but is now the time or the place.
Yes.
And so
I struggle with that.
I think, you're not alone there. That's for sure.
Work video conferencing. I mean, there's so many opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so it is 4:00. I really appreciate you coming on. You are our first guest, and that means the world. So anyway, thank you so much, Ray. And is there any way that our viewers can get in touch with you or contact with you if or follow you, any kind of social media if you're interested in that, sharing that?
You know, I don't have whole lot of social media anymore, so but maybe someday, and then
Okay,
you know, someday I'll come back on here and be able to
awesome.
share that information. But
Okay,
it was a pleasure, and I hope to be invited back sometime soon. There's so much to talk
absolutely.
about.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
we've got
absolutely.
unlimited ideas here.
Well, I
So
really enjoy having you on. I'm sure they did as well. Thanks for all the value and perspective that you brought as well.
cool.
And thank you so much, viewers, for listening. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, Ray.
All right, take it easy.
You too. Bye bye.